If you record yourself sleeping between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., you won't remember what happens. But if you watch the footage, you lose. I first heard about the Lost Hour Challenge on a Reddit thread that was buried 3 layers deep under a post about sleepwalking. It wasn't a viral trend, not like One Man Hide and Seek or those AI-generated backrooms clips. It was quieter, almost whispered. Someone had posted a grainy video of themselves asleep in bed. Nothing really happened except one comment blew up. "You cut out the last 4 minutes." Why? That's when they look. That comment stuck in my brain like a splinter. I kept scrolling. Different threads, different people. All similar stories. People setting up cameras, going to bed, waking up fine, only to watch the recording and realize there's a gap in time they can't explain. Or worse, they see something standing over them. A figure. Or figures. Just watching. I'm not easily freaked out. I've done all the dumb internet rituals. Candles, mirrors, midnight games, hell, I did the elevator game in college. Nothing ever happened. The scariest thing I've ever seen was my own reflection at 3 a.m. after 6 cups of black coffee and an existential crisis. So I thought, what the hell? I'd film myself for one night, just to prove it's fake. Devin, my roommate, was the one who dared me. "Just don't puss out halfway," he said, chucking me a GoPro. I laughed it off. What am I gonna do, sleep through a demon creeping into my room? Devin grinned, then deadpanned. "That's the thing. You always do." The first thing I noticed was the quiet. You ever realize how loud your apartment is until everything goes dead silent? No fridge hum. No pipes. Not even street noise. Just stillness. I had set the GoPro on my bookshelf, facing the bed. Time-stamped, night vision on, plugged in so it wouldn't die halfway through. I crawled under the covers at 2:55 a.m., feeling stupid for playing into some Reddit ghost story. At exactly 3 a.m., I said to the camera, "All right, internet. Here's your creepy sleep tape. Let's see what monsters want to spoon." Then I closed my eyes. When I woke up, it was 4:01 a.m. No dreams. No nightmares. Just off. You know when you wake up and it feels like your body's still catching up with your brain? It was like that. A weird, floating sensation in my limbs. Like I was halfway submerged in water. My mouth was dry. My fingers were stiff. But everything looked normal. I turned to the GoPro. Still on. Still recording. Timer read 1 hour 1 minute and 26 seconds. Over an hour of footage. I should have just gone back to sleep. Instead, I got up, made coffee, and decided to watch it. I scrubbed through the footage on my laptop. Most of it was boring, me shifting in my sleep, adjusting the covers, turning over. But then, at exactly 3 hours 44 minutes and 17 seconds, the screen flickered. Just for a second. I rewound. Played it slower. Flicker. There. Something moved. I froze the frame. Turned up the brightness. My heart was suddenly pounding. I didn't know why. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was more like my body was reacting before my mind caught up. In the corner of the frame, near the closet, there was a shadow. Long, thin. Slouched. Like a person, but wrong. Like someone pretending to be a person. I stared at the screen for a solid minute. My ears were ringing. I didn't notice my breathing had changed shallow fast. I rewound again. Hit play at normal speed. The figure was just standing there. Not moving. Just watching me sleep. And then at 3 hours 46 minutes and 52 seconds, it moved. Not like a person would. It twitched. A glitch. Like it skipped frames. It was at the foot of my bed now. Then the video cut to 3 hours and 51 minutes. For minutes missing. When it came back, I was in the same position. The figure was gone. Like it had never been there. Except my pillow was upside down. And the closet door, which I always closed before bed, was wide open. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was hammering now. Sweat beaded on my forehead, and I realized I'd been gripping the edge of the table hard enough to make my fingers go numb. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "It's a prank. Devin edited it. He's screwing with me." I ran to his room and banged on his door. No answer. I opened it. He wasn't there. His bed hadn't been slept in. Devin worked nights sometimes, but he always texted when he was staying at his girlfriend's. I texted him. "Yo, did you mess with my camera? Please tell me you did." No response. Then I noticed something else. There was a message on my mirror, written in steam like someone had breathed on the glass. "Don't watch it again." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with all the lights on, GoPro clutched in my lap like it could protect me. I kept refreshing my phone. Still no reply from Devin. At 6:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Devin, dude, WTF are you talking about? What vid?" I stared at the text for a second, confused. Me, the GoPro. Last night. You dared me, remember? Devin, bro, I haven't seen you since Monday. That made my blood run cold. It was Thursday. Me at IS Monday. What are you talking about? Devin, you're kidding, right? Devin, it's Thursday, dude. I thought you left town or something. Where the hell have you been? I dropped the phone. I checked the date in the corner of my laptop. Thursday, March 23rd. I looked at my kitchen calendar. Still said Monday the 20th. My alarms were set for Tuesday morning. My laundry basket had the same clothes I'd worn 3 days ago. I had no memory of Tuesday or Wednesday. At all. That night, I didn't set up the GoPro. I didn't even go to sleep. I stayed up until dawn, lights blazing, TV on, watching old Simpsons reruns on loop like they were a lifeline. I don't know how I lost 2 full days. I don't know what happened in that missing time. All I know is this, the footage was only 56 minutes long. I pressed record at 2:59 a.m. I woke up at 4:01 a.m. There are 4 minutes missing. And now I see shadows in the corners of my apartment. They're always watching at 3:44 a.m. There's something rotten about 3:44 a.m. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean it literally smells like rot. I noticed it the second night after watching the footage. I didn't film myself again, hell no. But I stayed awake, curled up on the couch under a blanket with the TV on low volume, trying to feel normal again. And right around 3:44 a.m., this wave of sour, sickly air drifted through the apartment. It was subtle at first, like wet drywall or spoiled meat. But then it got thicker. Dense. Almost tangible. Like I could feel it in my teeth. I checked the fridge. I checked the trash. I opened windows. The smell faded around 4 o'clock like nothing had ever happened. That's when I knew this wasn't just about the video. Something had followed me out of it. Devin finally came by the next morning. I didn't even hear him knock. Just opened my eyes and saw him standing there, concerned, holding a coffee and a grocery bag. You look like shit, dude. Thanks, I muttered, pulling myself up from the couch. My neck cracked audibly. No, seriously, he said. When's the last time you slept? Monday. He blinked. It's Saturday. I stared at him. He handed me the coffee. Tell me everything. I showed him the video. The figure. The flicker. The 4 minutes that were just gone. I thought maybe, just maybe, he confessed to editing it. That it was all a prank. That this was some elaborate setup for TikTok clout. But Devin didn't laugh. His face lost all its color by the time I paused on the frozen frame of the figure standing by the closet. I never saw anything like that, he whispered. I frowned. I thought you said you tried the challenge. He slowly shook his head. I lied. I never hit record. I just wanted you to try it first. We scrubbed the footage together, frame by frame. The audio was normal until 3:43. Then it went dead. No static, no clicks, nothing. Just total silence. At 3 hours 44 minutes and 17 seconds, the figure flickered into frame. It never made a sound. Just appeared. No footsteps. No breathing. Just presence. And then the cut, straight to 3:51. Devin froze the video and pointed to the timestamp. That's the hole. The 4-minute gap, I said. He glanced at me. What if that's when it gets in? We went full internet detective mode after that. Spent the whole day digging through forums, deep web archives, weird Discord servers. And that's when we found her. A user named Delta_Sleepwave on a long-abandoned sleep disorder forum. She had posted 6 years ago under the thread. I filmed the lost hour. Now I can't stop disappearing. We read every word. She had the same experience. Missing minutes. A figure. Dreams she couldn't remember but woke up from with cuts and bruises. Her final post said, "Whatever you do, don't rewind. Don't rewatch it. If you look at the figure for too long, it learns you. It gets into your head. It uses you to stay." Her account went dark after that. No updates. No responses. We tried Googling her username. All we got were dead ends and creepy reposts with the caption, "She watched it twice." That night, I unplugged the GoPro and shoved it in the back of my closet. I didn't care if I never found out what happened in those 4 minutes. I just wanted it to be over. But it wasn't. Because the next morning, I woke up in my bathtub. Fully clothed. Soaking wet. Phone in my back pocket. Water turned ice cold. I don't remember getting in. I don't remember even going to bed. I checked the apartment, everything was locked. No signs of entry. No messages on my phone. No missed calls. Except, my call log showed an outgoing call at 3:48 a.m. to a number I didn't recognize. I tapped it. No voicemail. No name. Just 11 digits and a sick feeling in my gut. +011444444 43444. My hands were shaking. Devin came over again that afternoon. I told him everything. About the bathtub, the call, the gap in my memory. He didn't even hesitate. We need to watch the footage again. I told him I didn't record anything. I know, he said, but you were recorded. He pulled out his phone and opened our apartment's Wi-Fi camera feed. I forgot he had installed a security cam facing the front door last year after a neighbor got robbed. It had night vision, 1080p, motion alerts. He tapped into the footage from last night. Let's see what you did between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock. At 3:47 a.m. I appeared in the frame. Shirtless, pale, expressionless, eyes wide open. I walked out of my bedroom barefoot, past the camera and out the front door. Wait, where'd you go? Devin muttered. I didn't answer. I was too focused on the next part. At 3:51 a.m. I came back in. But I was different. My walk was stiff. My eyes weren't blinking. And my mouth was moving like I was whispering something. Only one phrase over and over. Devin turned the volume up. And that's when we both heard it. 4 to 4, 4 to 4, 4 to 4, 4 to 4, 4 to 4. Over and over. Slurred. Monotone. My skin prickled like I'd been dipped in ice water. We scrubbed back and noticed something else. When I re-entered the apartment, I was soaking wet, hair matted, shirt clinging to my chest, footprints on the tile. But we checked the floor this morning. It was dry. Maybe you cleaned up? Devin offered weakly. I shook my head. No towels. No mop. And I sure as hell didn't dry my phone out. He swallowed hard. Then that means it never actually happened? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I was still happening. Later that night, I sat on my bed with every light in the apartment on. I watched the clock. 3:38. 3:39. Devin was asleep on the couch, a baseball bat in his lap. We had agreed to take shifts staying awake. 3:42. 3:43. My heart started pounding. My ears rang. The air grew thick again. 3:44 a.m. There was a soft knock at the front door. Not loud, not urgent, just casual, like a friend. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the door across the hall, my breath held. Knock, knock, knock. 3 times. Evenly spaced. Polite. Then silence. I waited. Then my bedroom doorknob turned. I jumped back. It didn't open. It just twisted. Rattled once. Then stopped. No footsteps. No shadows under the door. But then I heard it. A whisper right next to my ear. 4 minutes. I didn't sleep after the whisper. Would you? I sat on the edge of my bed until morning, staring at the doorknob. It never moved again, but I swear I heard breathing. Not loud, just near, like someone waiting. And the worst part? It sounded like me. Same cadence, same rhythm, like my own breath echoing back through the wood. Devin woke up just after sunrise. I told him everything. The knock, the door handle, the whisper. His face turned pale like it had the day I showed him the figure on the GoPro. We both knew the truth now. This wasn't just a haunting. It wasn't a curse. It was a virus. A mental virus. Like an idea that infects your brain and makes it soft. Like it carves out holes behind your eyes and waits inside them. And the more you know, the more it knows you. That's when I remembered the user from the forum, Delta_Sleepwave. The one who said she couldn't stop disappearing. Devin and I decided we needed to find her. Or find someone who knew her. Problem was, her posts were from 6 years ago. The forum itself had long been archived read-only. But someone had linked her profile to a blog. Not a public one. Buried. A single HTML page hosted on a ghost server. It was titled, The Watchers in the Missing Minutes. One post. No images. Just text. It began like a diary. Rambling. Repetitive. Paranoid. You don't dream during the lost hour. You swap places. They live where time bleeds. 44 is their door. 51 is the way back. Devin read it aloud while I scrolled. The further we went, the more broken her thoughts became. But the timeline lined up perfectly with us. She mentioned the knock at 3:44. She mentioned the call from the unknown number. She mentioned waking up soaked. Lost days. Video gaps. And then we hit a section that made the hair rise on my arms. If you record them, they see you. If you rewatch, they mark you. The 4-minute hole is where they enter. It's not a glitch. It's a bridge. They learn you through the tape. Through your own reflection. That's how they get inside. After the second watch, I stopped recognizing myself in mirrors. After the third, my reflection started moving first. I stopped scrolling. Devin muttered, "Okay, no more watching. Ever." But I couldn't stop reading. I needed to know what happened to her, what we were up against. At the bottom of the post was a single update. "I'm going in one last time. I set the cam for 2:59. This time, I'm not watching the tape. I'll let someone else find it. I'll leave the file in the mirror drive. If I don't come back, tell them, don't answer at 3:51. We looked at each other. "What's the mirror drive?" Devin asked. I had no clue, but the phrase stuck in my head like a song lyric I'd never heard. We Googled it. Most of the hits were about tech storage systems. One link, however, was a mega file repository with that exact label. Mirror_drive.zip uploaded 6 years ago. Inside, a single MP4 file. Delta_sleepwave_359 and .mov. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that now. I should have followed her warning. But I needed to see. I turned the volume off, maximized the window, made Devin leave the room. If I scream, I told him, "Don't come in." "You're an idiot," he said, but didn't argue. He just stood outside the door, gripping his bat. The footage was grainy and green-tinted. Night vision. A woman lay in bed, eyes closed. The timestamp read 2:59 a.m. She didn't move until 3:44. That's when the shadow crawled in. Yes, crawled. Not walked. Not glitched. It slithered on the ceiling. Upside down. Limbs too long. Knees bent backwards. And its head, it was just her face. Stretched. Grinning. Upside down. At 3:47, the screen twitched. She sat up, eyes wide, staring directly into the lens. Then the screen cut to black. When it came back, 3:51, she was gone. Just an empty bed. And then the audio cut in. One whisper. Not hers. Who's watching who? I slammed the laptop shut. Devin burst in, panicked. "I told you not to come in." I shouted. "You were laughing," he said, wide-eyed. I blinked. "I wasn't." "Yes, you were. You were giggling." I didn't remember that. That night, I turned all the mirrors around in the apartment. Every one. Bathroom. Closet. Bedroom. Anything with a reflection I flipped or covered. I couldn't stop picturing that thing on the ceiling. Its joints cracking. Her face smiling upside down. And the whisper. I started wearing headphones at night. Not to sleep, I still wasn't sleeping. Just to block out any sound I didn't want to hear. Devin thought I was losing it. He wasn't wrong. 3:44 a.m. came again. This time, the knock came from inside the hallway. Not the front door. I didn't open anything. I didn't move. But at 3:51, my phone lit up. Incoming call, +0114444443444. I watched it ring. And then something strange happened. The phone answered itself. No button press. Just click. And in my ear, through the speaker. "We saw you watching." I threw the phone across the room. It didn't break. It just started playing the video again. The one from the mirror drive. And this time, my own voice echoed behind hers. "Who's watching who?" The next morning, the mirrors were back to normal. As in, they weren't flipped anymore. I didn't do it. Devin swore he didn't either. That's when we made a decision. We needed help. Real help. Not a priest. Not a ghost hunter. We needed someone who knew how to close a loop. How to end a viral curse before it burned its way through both our skulls. Devin found someone online. A user named Reed Arcadian, known for reverse engineering creepypasta ARGs and pulling hidden metadata out of haunted media. They agreed to a voice call. I didn't ask how much Devin paid them. We told them everything. The video. The knocks. The calls. The disappearing time. They were quiet for a long time. Then they asked, "Have either of you watched it more than once?" We both said no. Then I remembered. The footage on Devin's door cam. Technically, I'd watched that twice. Once with him. Once alone. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything. Red Arcadian gave us one final warning. There's a rule in memetic contamination. The more you share it, the stronger it gets. Especially if it's audio-visual. You're feeding it with every click, every replay. Burn the source. Close all mirrors. Salt the entry point. Don't sleep in the same place twice. I asked what they meant by entry point. They just said, where the hole opens. 3:44 to 3:51. That's when the doors bleed. That's how it leaks through. And then they hung up. No goodbye. Just click. That night, Devin didn't come home. He wasn't answering his texts. I checked his location. It had stopped updating at 3:48 a.m. Right outside our apartment door. When I opened it, I found his phone on the ground. and next to it, a sticky trail, like water, or blood, leading away from the door, into nothing. He was gone, just like that. I haven't moved from the hallway floor since Devin disappeared. I'm sitting where his phone was, where that dark, wet trail began. The carpet's still damp beneath me, but it's not water. Not blood either. It's thicker, like oil. Smells metallic. My skin itches where it's soaked through my jeans. But I don't move. I can't. Because every time I look up from the carpet, I see the time on the wall clock. It's stuck at 3:51 a.m. And it's been 3:51 for the past 7 hours. I tried turning it off, taking out the battery, smashing the glass. Didn't matter. Every time I look up at it, it's back on the wall. Ticking. Slowly, but never passing 3:51. I even covered it with a towel at one point just to block it from view. 10 minutes later, it was uncovered again, and the towel was folded neatly on my pillow. At 9 a.m. real time, according to my phone, I got a call. Not the cursed number, this one was from Devin's mom. I almost didn't answer, but I forced myself to, voice trembling as I said hello. She sounded panicked. "Where's Devin?" I froze. She told me he'd missed their weekly call. Hadn't shown up for a dentist appointment. She'd driven past his apartment and found it empty. "I thought he was staying with you," she said. I couldn't answer. Not truthfully. Not without sounding completely insane. So I lied. Said we'd gotten into an argument and he'd left to cool off. Her voice cracked. "He didn't take his car." My breath caught. "His car is still parked in your driveway. That was yesterday. Devin hasn't come back. Not physically. But the house knows him now. I keep hearing his voice. In places he's never stood. From inside walls. Under my bed. Behind the bathroom mirror. Sometimes it says things I know he never would. Other times it just whispers one word. Answer." I checked the footage from my security cam. One last time. Devin stood outside the apartment at 3:48 a.m. the night he disappeared. He raised his hand to knock. Then froze. Head tilted. Like he was hearing something just behind the door. Then he smiled. That's what haunts me most. Not the static that bloomed around him like mist. Not the way his outline blurred like a bad VHS tape. But that smile. Not fear. Not confusion. Just calm, blissful recognition. And then he walked backwards. Straight into the dark. Out of frame. Gone. I called his number again. Straight to voicemail. Then, 20 minutes later, my phone lit up with a notification. 5 folder 1 new voicemail received at 3:51 a.m. I hadn't heard it ring, but the timestamp chilled my bones. Hands shaking, I hit play. For 7 seconds, it was nothing but static. Then, Devin's voice. "Hey, I'm still here. Just answer. Please." Then, silence. Then, a second voice. Not Devin's. Not even human. It rasped, low and wet like breath on a cave wall. 3:51 is not a time. It's a door. That's when I knew I had to destroy it all. The GoPro. The mirror drive. My laptop. My phone. Everything that had touched the hour. I started with the GoPro. Wrapped it in 3 layers of towels, dropped it into the bathtub, and smashed it with a hammer until it stopped twitching. But the footage? I didn't even realize it had auto-backed up to Google Drive. Same with the mirror video. Even the screen-recorded call from the day before still saved in the cloud. I stared at the files. Clicked delete. But they didn't disappear. They just duplicated. Delta_sleepwave.mov1, Delta_sleepwave.mov2, Delta_sleepwave.mov3. They were multiplying every time I blinked. Like they knew I was watching. At 3:44 a.m. my doorbell rang. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The clock still said 3:51, but the world felt like 3:44. That heavy, bloated silence again. The air thick and syrupy. My teeth ached from clenching. Then came the knock. Not from the front door. From the bathroom mirror. 3 slow taps. Fingernail against glass. Tap, tap, tap. Then silence. Then my voice from inside the mirror. "It's safe now. You can answer." I ran. Didn't grab anything. Didn't look back. I sprinted down the hallway barefoot out into the freezing 4 a.m. air. Didn't even bother locking the door behind me. I just ran. I made it 6 blocks before I realized I didn't have my keys, wallet, or shoes. Didn't matter. I kept running. Until I reached the gas station at the edge of town. Bright fluorescent lights. The smell of oil and burned coffee. A cashier who looked more confused than alarmed. I must have looked wild, sweaty, barefoot, eyes bloodshot. but he didn't say anything. Just handed me a bottle of water when I stumbled up to the counter. "You good, man?" he asked. I opened my mouth, paused, then said, "Do you have a clock?" He pointed to the wall. 3:51 a.m. I ran out screaming. I slept in a church parking lot, wrapped in a hoodie someone had left in the donation bin. The sun rose slow and sickly, like it wasn't sure it wanted to show up. But I felt safer in daylight. Until I checked my phone again. I'd powered it off. Airplane mode. Yet somehow there it was. Telephone receiver missed call +011 444 443 444 3 o'clock 3:51 a.m. incoming envelope voicemail, "You're already in." I went to the library when it opened. Used their computers to research more about the number. The phrase 351. Anything. Most searches turned up nothing. A few weird conspiracy blogs. One Reddit post with 0 upvotes that simply read, "Don't answer at 3:51. You're not you when you do." And one old article, archived from a 1996 paranormal journal, titled "The Black Room Between 3:44 and 3:51. It described sleep studies done in the 80s where subjects were monitored between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Some reported intense lucid dreams, others claimed to see shadow people. But 7 subjects went missing, just vanished from their hospital rooms between 3:44 and 3:51 a.m. Only one ever returned. He was found 2 days later, 300 miles away, wandering through a burned-down church. Naked. Mute. He wrote one sentence on the hospital wall before disappearing again. "They keep me awake inside the dark minute. I don't know if I'm dreaming now. I don't know if I ever woke up. My phone keeps buzzing. I've stopped answering. I've destroyed 3 different clocks. They all eventually reset to 3:51. The time's not moving anymore. I'm not moving anymore. I feel like I'm being buffered. Like the world's waiting to render what comes next. And every time I close my eyes, I see a room. Pitch black. But I know I'm not alone. I can't hear breathing. But I can hear scratching. Last night, I stayed at a motel. I chose one of those ugly, windowless rooms. No mirrors. Cheap. Loud air conditioner. I bolted the door and curled up under the covers like a child. My eyes flicked to the microwave clock across the room. 3:43 a.m. I stared. I told myself I wouldn't look again. I closed my eyes. Held my breath. Tried to count. Tried not to listen. But I heard it anyway. The static hum. The whisper. The scratching. And then, just as I thought I could ignore it. Ring. My phone lit up from the nightstand. +011 444 443 444 incoming call 3:51 a.m. I screamed. Knocked the phone to the ground. Covered my ears. But I still heard the voice. Not through the phone. Inside the room. Behind me. Under the bed. Inside my head. If you answer at 3:51, you stay. If you don't, we come for you. I didn't think anyone else had made it this far. I thought I was the last one watching the clock, counting seconds that didn't exist, trapped in a timeline that frayed at the edges every time the minute hand approached the hour. But then I met Joan. I found her by accident. Or maybe not. I was living out of my car at that point. No more motels. No more doors to knock. No more clocks to lie to me. I kept driving. Gas station to gas station. Always heading somewhere new. Trying to outpace the hour like it was something with feet. But no matter where I went, 3:44 still found me. Every night, without fail, something would change. The radio would die. The GPS would glitch. My headlights would flicker, and for a second I'd see something in the rearview mirror, not in the car, but walking behind it. Following. Stretching impossibly long limbs across an empty highway that had no end. And every time I blinked, I was 4 minutes closer to the call. So I kept driving. I stopped for gas in a town I'd never heard of, Calumet Grove, population 381. A tiny patch of cracked pavement and rusted metal out near the Midwest cornfields. There was one store, one gas station, and a 24-hour diner where the waitress looked like she hadn't blinked since the 80s. I only went inside to use the bathroom. But as I passed the corner booth, I heard something that froze me. 3:51, a voice muttered. "It's not a time. It's a tide." My heart thudded like a warning bell in my ears. I turned. She was sitting alone. Cup of coffee untouched. No phone. No plate. Just staring straight ahead like she was watching something I couldn't see. She looked around 40, maybe younger. Pale skin. Hair in a loose braid. Dressed in a hoodie and jeans, but her eyes. God, her eyes. They looked like mine. Like someone who hadn't seen a real minute pass in days. I slid into the booth without asking. You've heard it. She didn't blink. The call? I nodded. Yeah, she said quietly. I heard it. I answered. I stared. You're the first person I've met who has. She finally looked at me. Really looked. And her lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then I'm the last person you should be talking to. Her name was Joan. 6 months ago, she was a night shift nurse in Kansas City. The job was rough. Long hours, few breaks. She started falling asleep in her car before work, just quick naps to survive the fatigue. One night, on a whim, she set her phone to record while she slept. Something about a podcast she'd heard, lucid dreaming experiments, consciousness drift, all that. She didn't remember anything. But when she watched the video, 3:44 a.m. flicker. 3:46, a figure watching from outside the car. 3:48, Joan sitting up, eyes wide open, speaking in tongues. 3:51, static. Then the video jumped to 4:03 and she was asleep again. She never posted it, never told anyone, until the dream started, until the static began bleeding into her waking hours, until her own voice began calling her on the phone, crying, begging, screaming not to pick up. But eventually she did. I thought it was over, she whispered. I thought once I answered it'd stop. Did it? I asked. She nodded. The call stopped. But her fingers trembled on her coffee cup. But the loop started. After she answered, Joan began losing time. Not like before, not hours. Weeks. One day she'd wake up and it'd be Thursday. Next thing she knew, it was the middle of the following month. Her calendar kept resetting. Her phone had photos she didn't remember taking. Her email inbox was full of strange messages, sent from her own account, to herself, all with the same subject line. You are not the only you. She said she started finding versions of herself. Traces, shadows, footprints that matched hers exactly. Notes in her handwriting left in motel rooms she didn't remember staying in. And once, she said she woke up in a house that wasn't hers. Same furniture, same layout, but everything was off by a degree. The picture frames held different smiles. The fridge had food she didn't eat. The TV had shows queued up she'd never watched. She fled before she saw herself. But she knew, deep in her bones, she wasn't the only one stuck in the loop. I asked her why the figure always came at 3:44. Why the call always hit at 3:51. She looked out the window, watching cars that weren't there. It's not a call, she said. I blinked. What? It's a question. The call is them asking if you're ready to let go of this timeline. This self. She turned to me, eyes hollow. And every time you answer, they make another version. One to stay, one to leave. And they shuffle the deck. I felt cold all over. They make copies? She nodded. And one always goes dark. Joan told me she stopped answering the phone after the third time. She stopped recording herself. Stopped watching reflections. Stopped speaking out loud after sunset. She carried a stopwatch, wore 3 watches, and only slept in abandoned buildings. Places with no clocks, no mirrors, no screens. Still, she wasn't sure if she was real anymore. I'm the 5th, she said quietly. The 5th what? She looked at me. The 5th me. She leaned in. I'll tell you something no one else will, she whispered. Go to any major city. Find a rooftop between 3:44 and 3:51 a.m. Look at the windows of the apartment buildings. Why? Because you'll see it. The flicker. That's how you count the others. What others? She smiled. The ones who answered. The ones like us. I tried to process what she was saying. All I could think was, why haven't they taken her? Why is she still here when Devin is gone? As if she read my thoughts, she said, they don't take everyone. Some people, they need. Need for what? Joan looked up, and for the first time in our conversation, I saw fear. Not dread, not anxiety. Fear. To keep the loop running. To ask the next question. I went cold. What question? She looked me straight in the eyes and said, who's watching who? That was the last thing she said to me. I blinked, and she was gone. No door opening. No footsteps. Just gone. The waitress said she'd been alone the whole time. Said she never saw anyone in that booth. And on the table where Joan had sat, there was an old, yellowed Polaroid dot of me, sleeping, time-stamped, 3:51 a.m. After Joan vanished, I sat in that booth for over an hour, waiting for her to return, waiting for the waitress to change her mind and admit she saw her, waiting for anything that made sense. But nothing did, because that Polaroid of me, it wasn't a picture of the past. It was of tonight. Same hoodie I was wearing now. Same cut on my lip I got climbing over a chain fence the night before. Same motel key hanging from my neck. Same timestamp burned into the bottom. 3:51 a.m. Except in the photo, I wasn't sleeping. I was smiling. I burned the picture in the diner parking lot. Used a cheap lighter I stole from the counter display. Took 3 tries to catch. The flame didn't want it. Curled like skin. Smelled like old milk and ozone. And when the fire reached the timestamp, the flame hissed like something inside it was screaming. After that, I didn't stay in town. Couldn't. That place felt watched. Like it was full of other people who'd seen the flicker. People who had answered the call and never told anyone. I drove until I hit a city. Didn't matter which. They all blur together now. Tall buildings, window lights, late night trains, reflections in glass I refused to look into. I remembered what Joan said. Go to a rooftop, watch the windows, count the flickers. I found one. A tall office building with a rooftop access door someone forgot to lock. I climbed 12 flights, lungs burning, ribs sore from sleeping in the car too many nights. At 3:43 a.m., I was standing at the edge, looking out over the sleeping city. By 3:44, the world had gone quiet. And then it began. Window by window, apartment by apartment. I saw them. The flickers. Tiny bursts of movement, too fast to be natural. Like frames skipped in a video. One window, then another, then 10 more. Some were faint. Some exploded with light, then snapped back to dark. I saw people rising from beds like they were yanked up by invisible strings. I saw silhouettes behind people sleeping, tall and jagged, outlined by impossible shadows. I saw one man stand up, look into a mirror, and shatter it with his face. Not his hand, his face. Then he kept smiling, glass sticking out of his jaw. In one window, a girl was just staring right at me, eyes locked across hundreds of feet of empty air. She didn't move, didn't blink. I turned my head, looked back, still staring. Except now, she was closer. The building hadn't changed. The distance hadn't changed. But she had. Her head was tilted, her mouth moving, like she was mouthing words I couldn't hear. I stepped back from the edge. The rooftop felt like it was tilting forward, like the whole city wanted me to fall. I ran, didn't take the stairs, took the elevator. It should have been a death sentence, I know. But the walls were mirrored, and I needed to see, needed to know if the girl followed. When the doors shut, I turned to face myself in the polished chrome. And for just a second, I wasn't alone. My reflection smiled first. Not a twitch, not a facial quirk. A full, delayed reaction. I blinked. Didn't. I moved my hand. It raised the other, like a bad video reversed in real time. And then it opened its mouth and said something I couldn't hear. Because I wasn't wearing headphones anymore. Because I needed to know. The whisper hit me like a needle to the spine. You watched. Now we switch. The elevator doors opened. And for a second, I hesitated. What if the version in the reflection stepped out instead? What if I was still inside, watching from the other side? But nothing happened. I stepped out, felt my feet on the ground, felt the cold tile, felt wrong, like I'd left something behind, or brought something with me. I stayed in a basement storage unit that night. No mirrors, no clocks, no reflections, just cold concrete and the hum of dead fluorescent bulbs. I didn't sleep. I listened to my own breathing, to the voice in the back of my skull, to the whisper of my own voice asking, "Why do you think they call it a reflection?" By now, I had pages of notes, symbols, time patterns, phrases, the watchers, the flicker, the 4-minute hold dot, the rule of 3:44 to 3:51. I even started building maps, drawing where I'd been, where I lost time, where I saw shadows move faster than my eyes could track. But something kept bothering me. The loop. Joan had said it wasn't a lie. She said every time you answer, you make another you. But what if that wasn't a metaphor? What if the real you stops existing the moment you watch? I needed to know what happened to the other me. I remembered what Devin said, that on the door cam footage, I walked out at 3:47 and came back at 3:51. That's the version that's still here. The one typing this. The one who's been running. But what if the version who walked out? What if he's still walking? What if he never stopped? What if I'm not the original? I broke into a tech repair shop that night. I needed a screen, a live feed, no tapes, no recordings, just a mirror made of pixels. I rigged a webcam to a monitor and set it up to stream me. Live only, no memory. Then I sat in front of it. 3:30 a.m., 3:35 a.m. The shop was silent. I kept my eyes on the screen. Nothing moved, except the pixels began to bleed. Tiny flickers in the reflection. Lines of static. A shadow stretching behind me that wasn't on the wall. At 3:44 a.m., my reflection blinked. I didn't. Smiled. Raised a hand. Waved at me. Then pointed to the corner of the screen. And there, in bright digital numbers, the monitor displayed 3:51 a.m. I stood up, yanked the plug from the wall. The screen went black. And from the darkness, I heard, "This time, you were the reflection." I ran again. Didn't stop until I hit a town I didn't recognize. Didn't care about food, sleep, nothing. I just needed to forget. I destroyed my phone, threw my notebook into a storm drain, set fire to my hoodie, the one I saw in the Polaroid. I thought maybe if I burned every piece of me, the copy would disappear too. But I was wrong, because the next night, in a motel bathroom, I saw the mirror fog up behind me without any steam. And in the fog, 2 words written backwards. Not you. I didn't plan on going back. Not their dot. But something pulled me. Not a whisper this time. Not a dream dot. More like a memory, but from someone else's head. It came while I was staring into a bathroom sink, trying to scrub the dried blood from under my fingernails. I don't know where the blood came from. I don't remember bleeding. But as I stared at my hands, it hit me dot. The sudden, vivid image. The red booth dot. The untouched cup of coffee dot. The window beside the counter dot. Calumet Grove Diner. Joan had been there. I'd been there. And something hadn't finished. I arrived just before midnight. Same neon sign flickering over the parking lot. Same smell of old grease and burned eggs wafting through the glass doors. I walked in. A bell jingled above the door. The same waitress was there, her eyes glassy and tired, moving like she was stuck buffering. I picked the same booth. Sat down. Waited. I didn't order. Didn't need to. At 12:43 a.m., a mug of black coffee appeared in front of me without a word. The waitress never looked at me. The place was empty. Too quiet. No clink of forks. No background music. Not even the hum of a fridge. It felt like the diner had been paused mid-breath. Then at 1:17 a.m., someone slid into the other side of the booth. I didn't look up right away, because I already knew. It was Joan. Except it wasn't. Not the Joan I remembered. Not the one I talked to in this same booth not long ago. This version was paler. Her hair hung wet down her shoulders like she'd just come in from the rain, but the parking lot was dry. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, red around the rims. And she wasn't breathing. I watched her chest dot. Still. Flat. Like someone had drawn her there, pencil and ink, and forgot to animate the lungs. And then she smiled. Loop's done. I swallowed hard. My coffee was cold. The cup was trembling in my hands. I didn't speak, just waited for her to continue. Her eyes tracked mine, not like she was watching me, but like she was waiting for a cue. Like she didn't know what to say until I moved. Then I asked, "Joan?" She cocked her head. "That one's gone. Left the loop. You're talking to the remainder." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" She grinned wider. "Every loop leaves the skin. I'm what's left when the version that mattered gets out." I tried to stand. Couldn't. My legs were lead. My arms were rubber. The air around me felt thick, like gravity was stitched differently here. Like I was in the eye of something bigger than weather. You were never supposed to come back here, she whispered. Now the exit's watching. Behind her, the window reflected our booth. Only I wasn't in it. Joan was. Twice. One version smiling. One version crying. Why are you showing me this? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her pocket and slid something across the table. An old digital recorder. The kind reporters used in the early 2000s. Tape still inside. Labeled in black Sharpie. Delta final loop. She stood up. Her movements were jerky like old claymation. Limbs catching slightly before correcting. Play it at 3:51, she said. Not before. Not after. Then she turned and walked out the door. Except she didn't open it. She walked through it. Like mist through a wall. I stared at the recorder. Didn't touch it for hours. By the time I looked up, the diner was empty again. My coffee was gone. My reflection in the window had stopped mimicking me. And the waitress? She was behind the counter, sobbing. Not loud. Just quiet, broken sounds. Her eyes locked with mine for a split second, and she mouthed, "Get out." I took the recorder back to the storage unit. My new safe space. Concrete walls, no mirrors, no screens, no clocks. Just a wind-up timer I used to track the hour. I waited. I kept the recorder on the floor in front of me like it might bite if I got too close too soon. At 3:50 a.m. I took a deep breath. At 3:51 I hit play. The tape hissed. Then Joan's voice. "This is the last loop. I don't know which version hears this, but I hope it's the one that made it out. They aren't beings. They're reflections of choices. Echoes that won't wait. The hour between 3:44 and 3:51 is when the world is weakest, when your mind is most open. That's when they ask to be let in. Every time you film yourself, you create a potential version. Watch the footage? You feed it. Answer the call? You let it in. The only way out is to let go of the original thread. Leave the loop. Leave you." The audio cut to silence for 10 seconds. Then came a new sound. Not her voice. A chorus. Dozens, no, hundreds of voices overlapping. All whispering different phrases at once in waves. "Not me, still here, you're watching, not yet, take it back, close your eyes, open the mirror." And then one loud voice, mine, over all of them. "Stop the tape." I dropped the recorder like it burned me. My ears rang. My hands itched. I felt like ants were crawling under my skin. I smashed the recorder with my heel. Once. Twice. Again. But it didn't break. I picked it up and threw it against the wall. It cracked, but it kept hissing. Kept playing. "Who's watching who?" It whispered again. "Who left? Who stayed?" I buried it outside the city the next day. Found an empty patch of dirt beneath a dead tree, dug a hole with a broken car jack, and dropped the recorder in. Covered it with salt. Said nothing. But as I packed the dirt in, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was standing across the street. Tall. Still. Watching. And they were wearing my face. I didn't run. Not this time. I just walked to my car. Started the engine. And drove. Didn't look back. Didn't blink. Didn't think. Because now I understood. Joan didn't survive. Not fully. Not cleanly. But she escaped. And in her place, something stayed. A skin dot. A leftover dot. A reflection that didn't get to finish being real. The kind that lingers. That sits in booths at diners and waits for you to come back. Just to hand you the map to your own end. I didn't know the building was there until I dreamt of it. But when I woke up, I knew exactly how to get there. I couldn't draw a map. Couldn't enter it into GPS. Couldn't even remember the name of the street. But my hands turned the wheel like they'd done it 100 times. And when I finally pulled up, I wasn't surprised to see it. A pale, windowless building squatting between two apartment complexes. One story. No signage. No lights. Just a black door. Like a period in a sentence no one finished writing. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. Each step felt heavier, like gravity was thicker here. Like the closer I got, the more my body remembered something my brain didn't. The door had no handle. But when I touched it, it opened. Not inward. Not outward. Just open. Like it peeled apart for me. Inside was a single hallway, carpeted in a deep red that reminded me of dried blood. The walls were white. But not clean white. Hospice white. Abandoned hospital white. Every few feet there was a door. Identical. No numbers. No signs. Just pale wood and cheap knobs. I walked past 7 of them. On the 8th door I stopped. Because I heard my voice. It wasn't coming from inside the room. It was coming from behind me. I turned around and saw nothing, but the sound remained. A loop of something I didn't remember saying, "It's okay, it's okay. Just watching, just watching, just watching." I reached for the door, turned the knob, and stepped into the missing room. It looked like my bedroom, but wrong. Slightly too large. Windowless. Corners that curved in unnatural ways. Furniture that looked familiar but off by just a few inches. The bedspread I'd thrown away a year ago. The cracked lamp I'd never owned. And sitting on the bed was me. He didn't look up. Just sat there, hands on his knees, eyes vacant, head tilted like he was waiting for a sound that never came. I took one step forward. The floor groaned under my weight, but he didn't react. The only noise was the subtle clicking of his teeth, opening and closing his mouth every few seconds, like a doll with a faulty jaw spring. I whispered, "Hello," and he spoke in perfect unison with me. The exact same words, same tone, same breath, like a mirrored recording. Then he turned his head and smiled. I stumbled backward, hit the wall, but the door was gone. Where it had been, just smooth, unbroken white. "No," I muttered, spinning, slapping at the wall. "No, no, no, no." Behind me, I heard footsteps. Not mine. Closer. I turned back around and he was standing 2 feet away. His face was too calm, like he was wearing mine like a mask. He said, "You came back in." My throat tightened. "What is this place?" He tilted his head. "Where the ones who didn't choose go." "What do you mean?" He walked past me, toward the far wall, and placed a hand on it. It shimmered for a second, then blinked like an eye. Behind it was something else. Not a hallway dot, not another room. A void, dark, shifting dot. Shapes moved in it, tall and thin and twitching, like shadows trying to become real. He pointed. "That's where they're born. The ones we bring back." I whispered, "We." He nodded. "Every watcher becomes a window. Every version leaves a door." He smiled again. "You opened yours." The void pulsed. I couldn't look at it too long. It made my vision double, made my thoughts flicker. Every second I stared, I felt like I was being unwritten. "I'm not staying here," I said. He nodded slowly. "You won't. Not yet. Then let me out. You'll find your way. You always do. But next time, you'll come back softer." I didn't understand, but I remembered Joan. How strange she looked when I saw her again. Too smooth, too quiet, too calm. "Are you me?" I asked. He turned around. "I'm the version that never left. I'm the one that stayed in the missing 4 minutes." He tapped his temple. "You think you've been skipping over them, but those 4 minutes, they happen. Just not to you." I felt lightheaded. He continued, "Each time the gap plays, one of us gets taken. One of us gets made." "Into what?" His face twitched. "The next mirror." That's when I understood. The figure in the footage. The shadow behind the bed. The thing Joan saw crawling on the ceiling. They weren't monsters. They were us. Leftovers. Hollowed versions of people who answered at 3:51 or worse, watched too many times. We weren't haunted by demons. We were haunted by what we could have been. I pressed my hand against the wall, desperate for it to become a door again. Behind me, my other self was humming. It was my hum, a tune I hadn't sung since I was 12, riding in the back seat of my mom's car. He said, "Want to leave?" "Yes." He smiled. "Then stop asking questions." I blinked, and I was alone, back in my car. Same clothes, same blood under my nails, same hum in my throat like it had followed me back out. But something was different. I looked at my hands. New scars. Long, pale lines I didn't remember earning. Faint bruises around my wrists, as if someone had grabbed me. I reached into my jacket pocket and found another Polaroid. This one was of Joan, in the missing room, smiling at the camera. Behind her, the mirror was open, and in its reflection, I was watching. The hallway was never there before, not in this motel, not in any building. But when I woke up, it was just attached to the room. My bed was still under me, My backpack, my phone, everything in place. But where the bathroom door used to be, there was now a long, impossibly dark hallway. No lights, no fixtures, just a row of identical doors stretching into infinity, each one marked by a number hand-painted in fading red. I stepped toward the threshold. The carpet on this side ended in a clean line. No transition, just hotel carpet, then ancient stone. On the doorframe above the hallway, carved into the wood, was one phrase. "You only walk it once." I should have run. I should have thrown my bag over my shoulder, kicked open the motel window, and sprinted into the nearest sunrise. But I didn't, because part of me knew it. I'd already walked it before, and this time, I might actually make it to the end. I stepped inside. My foot sank slightly into the stone floor. It wasn't smooth, more like flesh, with veins that pulsed faintly under the surface. My breath caught in my throat. Door 1, closed. Door 2, a whisper behind it. Door 3, a scream. My scream. I kept going. Some doors bled. Some were warm. Some rattled as I passed, as if something on the other side was waiting for its turn. By door 17, I stopped trying to make sense of it. By door 22, I stopped counting my steps. But I knew where I was going. Door 44. Joan had mentioned it once. Back in the booth when she thought I wasn't listening. 44 is the door they come through. 51 is the way back. The symmetry was never an accident. 1, the start of the missing minutes. 2, the return. It's not a time. It's a threshold. At door 31, I found a mirror. The first one since I entered. It wasn't mounted, it was floating. Suspended in the air at eye level, spinning slowly. In it I saw myself. Older. Sunken eyes. Paler skin. Thin red lines running from my nose to my chin like blood had cried from my face. Behind me in the reflection, someone was standing. But when I turned, no one was there. I looked back at the mirror. Now 2 people stood behind me. I kept walking, my heart pounding louder with every door. At door 36, I heard Joan. Not her voice, but her breathing. Heavy, panicked, like she was running. I pressed my ear to the door. A heartbeat thumped through the wood. I moved on. Door 38 hissed. Door 41 bled. Door 43 groaned and shifted, almost opened. I backed away before it could. Then, door 44. It looked like all the others. Same height, same width, same faded red number painted like dried blood. But I knew, this was it. The origin point, where the 4-minute hole begins, where they step out, and where the first version of me never came back from. I pressed my hand to the surface. It was warm, not just warm, feverish. The wood throbbed like a living thing, and I could feel pressure, like something was leaning on the other side, waiting for me to turn the knob. So I did. The room beyond was black, not dark black, a total absence of color, a place where light had never lived, but not empty. No, I knew it wasn't empty. I stepped forward, and the door closed behind me. No latch, no slam, no sound, just gone. The hallway, the motel, the world gone. I stood on nothing, weightless, but not floating. More like I'd become unanchored, like I was no longer on a floor but inside a thought. Shapes moved in the dark, some slow, some twitching, some upright, some not. And from all around me I heard my voice. Thousands of versions. Crying, begging, laughing, screaming. Some whispered secrets I didn't want to know. Others repeated things I hadn't said yet. They need watchers. They're building something with our shadows. You never left the loop. You just made it bigger. This is the broadcast. Every copy is a signal. You are not the first signal. You are not the last. Then I saw them, lined up in rows like mannequins. Each one a version of me. Different clothes, different ages, different injuries. Some had no eyes. Some were covered in burns. One had hundreds of tiny mouths across his chest, all whispering in unison. They were watching a wall. And on that wall, a screen, playing the same footage on a loop. Me, sleeping, 3 a.m. 3:44, the flicker, the figure, 3:47, me rising, walking out, 3:51, cut. Over and over. I stepped closer. They didn't stop me, didn't look at me, didn't breathe. I stared at the screen, and for the first time I saw the part that had been missing. The 4-minute gap. The camera shook. Static blurred the frame. Then the lens refocused. And there, standing in front of the bed, was me, but not me. A version twisted, elongated, mouth stretched ear to ear, eyes black voids, skin too tight across too many bones. It reached forward, grabbed the sleeping version by the throat, and whispered something. The same whisper every copy in the room spoke. "This is where we make you." I turned to run, but the door was gone. Again. This time I didn't panic, because I saw a mirror, floating just like before. Only this time it wasn't showing me. It was showing the motel room. My room. Empty. Waiting. The mirror pulsed. And I understood. The only way out was to go back in. I stepped through. I stepped through the mirror. Into the motel room. Into myself. Same bed. Same half-open blinds. Same buzzing lamp with the flickering bulb. Same motel stink of mildew and detergent that never quite masks what came before. But something's off. The light is too dim. The shadows too sharp. The clock on the nightstand dead, but still ticking. Just a faint click 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 with no movement. And the mirror I came through? Gone. Just wallpaper now. Pale yellow. Peeling at the corners. The same pattern as the hallway in the 44th door. I sat on the bed. Waited. I didn't know what for, just that it was coming. Maybe I hoped I'd wake up. Maybe I thought the story would end neatly with a scream and a fade to black. But all that came was silence. And then the phone rang. Not my cell phone. The motel landline. The one I never touched. The one I'd unplugged when I first got here, yet now it glowed red and rang sharp and shrill like a blade drawn through the air. I stared at it. Didn't move. Until it rang a fourth time. Then I picked it up. I didn't say anything. But the voice on the other end did. And it was mine. "This is the last loop. Don't hang up. I'm not the one you think I am. But I'm the one who watched." I didn't respond. Couldn't. I was too busy listening to my own voice tell me about how many versions had tried to end it. How some had burned the tapes. How others smashed every screen they ever owned. How a few found ways to silence the call. But none of it worked. Because it wasn't about the call. It was about the watcher. We watched ourselves. Over and over. We stared too long into the hole between 344 and 351. And now the hole stares back. The line crackled. Then the voice changed. Still mine. But slower. More tired. Like something wearing my vocal cords. "You kept going. All the way through the dark. You saw them. The others. You saw what they became. And now." A pause. Then, "You've earned your version." The line went dead. I sat in silence. The phone still buzzing faintly against my ear. Then it clicked. One last time. And the clock on the nightstand ticked forward. To 3:51 a.m. That's when the shadows shifted. Slowly. Deliberately. Like they were making room for someone else. And out from the corner I stepped in. Another me. Same face. Same jacket. Same cut on the cheek I got climbing that fence 2 nights ago. But older. Or maybe just used. Like a copy of a copy that had started to blur. He didn't speak. He just reached into his coat, pulled something out and placed it on the bed beside me. A mirror. Small. Round. Framed in rust. I looked down at it. In the reflection, I wasn't me. I was him. And he was gone. The motel room was empty again. Except for me. And the mirror. And the sound of footsteps outside the door. I should have run. But I knew where I'd go. Back through the mirror. Back to the hallway. Back to the watchers, the flicker, the screaming reflections. I stayed seated. And then the room changed. No flash. No noise. Just a quiet, sudden shift. The TV turned on by itself. Static. Then footage. Me. Sleeping. On loop. From the beginning. I got up. Staggered toward the screen. But I didn't see the figure this time. I saw myself. Getting up. Leaving. Walking out. Then, returning. Only this time, the version that came back looked at the camera. And smiled. That's when I realized the truth. I didn't escape the loop. I became it. Every night from now on, someone will hit record. And I'll be the flicker. The blur. The watcher in the frame. I won't move. Not at first. I'll just be there. At 3:44, in the corner. By the closet. Near the bed. Waiting. At 3:47, I'll step forward. At 3:51, I'll vanish. And someone will rewind. They'll watch the footage. Again and again. And each time they do, I'll get closer. That's how the hour spreads. Not through blood. Not through screams. But through eyes. And clicks. And curiosity. You watched it. You read it. You reached the end. And now, you'll hear the call. You'll think it's a dream. You'll think it's a memory. You'll look at the clock and it'll say 3:51 a.m. And the phone will ring. Don't answer. But you will. Because like me, you want to know what's behind the missing minutes. And once you look, you're part of it. Telephone receiver ring. 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 Hello? It's you. I've been waiting.